Hello everyone, welcome to Tactica Imperialis and to today's video. Today it's going to be another My Thoughts On, and what I want to talk about is Warhammer Legends. Warhammer Legends is effectively the updated version of Warhammer Fantasy with the Age of Sigmar rule set. It's a bit more and a bit less than that, so I'll explain it in full as we go through the video. But I wanted to give my thoughts on it because it's quite an interesting thing that it exists, and it's quite useful, and it's something that I didn't get a chance to talk about in the video I made last week about Age of Sigmar because had it happened when I recorded the video? No, I don't think it had actually happened at the time of recording, so I couldn't talk about it at the time, but I do think if you want to consider this an appendix to the Thoughts on Age of Sigmar in 2018 video, which I'll link in the description if you like, and it's in the My Thoughts On playlist, you can also have a look at, and this is just a bit of an addendum to that and something else that Age of Sigmar is doing oh so right. So, I'll just transfer over quickly to Warhammer Community to explain what Warhammer Legends is. This is a complete set of rules for warriors, heroes and monsters from the world that was, alongside a brief summary of their background and playstyle. Every Citadel miniature is great, a unique piece of the ever-evolving narrative of Warhammer, correct. It is then unfortunate that we can't continue to sell and support every model indefinitely. As we make new ones and new books come out, we have to stop producing and featuring some old stuff, but just like many of you, we still treasure our collection of older miniatures and we still want to be able to use them in games and forge narratives. This is where Legends comes in. This is a great home for these miniatures, giving us somewhere to publish rules to allow you to keep playing with your older miniatures. The rules presented here are designed to be definitive and will only be updated if we change the core mechanics of Age of Sigmar. This means that they are not designed for match play, as they won't, for example, have yearly points updates. They actually don't have any points values at all, so you couldn't even put them into match play games. They don't have points values. As AOS continues to grow and evolve, it will give rise to all new heroes and factions. Others may be consumed by battle, slain, and themselves be consigned to Legends. On these occasions, we'll update to make sure that from here on out, all the models in your collection can always be used with the current rule set. I'll just leave that up there if you want to have a second read over it while I talk. So, effectively, this is the Warhammer Hall of Fame. This is where old miniatures that no longer exist or whose factions no longer exist go to live out the rest of their days, to be used and treasured and played over and over again. Basically, it's playing fantasy with the AOS rule set. And that's really good for a couple of really important reasons. One of which is obvious, and one is perhaps less obvious depending on how long you've been around AOS as a game. So obviously from a miniature standpoint, this is fantastic, and the first faction they've actually done for it is the Dark Elves, which is one of my two factions. I have a collection of Dark Elves that I am not using. Most egregiously, my Sorceress on Cold One and my Dreadlord on Cold One conversion are not allowed in Age of Sigmar in either Order Serpentis or Darkling Covenant. Can you tell I'm salty about that? Yes. But there are also other miniatures that I don't use anymore because I can't play those factions properly, and I don't really want to go out and buy new miniatures because I want to get the factions when they're updated. So whilst the Witch Elves are still good for Daughters of Cain, I don't want to be expanding what I've got, like my Dark Shards, my Dark Riders, my Executioners, my little bit of everything that I've got that doesn't fit into a faction, so now I can play them in Legends as the Dark Elves were designed to be back in the day. And when I say back in the day, I mean back in the day. You have rules for Malekith, not Malerion, Malekith. Marathi is not in her giant demon snake form, she's back on her Pegasus. You have the Manflayers, which is a unique unit, and you have the Sorceress on Cold One, the Dreadlord on Cold One, Malice Darkblade is back, Lockheed Fellheart is back. Basically, it's the Dark Elves army book from the last edition of Fantasy plonked into AOS, with actually different rules from their modern counterparts. So the Witch Elves of the Dark Elves are rather different, not just in terms of like faction rules, but in terms of actual war scroll, to the Witch Elves of the Daughters of Cain. It's actually quite interesting that they are slightly different. And they've also updated those rules, so the Sorceress on Core 1 has had her spell swapped from Blade Wind to Word of Pain, I think, or is it Chill Wind? Chill Wind or Blade Wind became Word of Pain, and so on and so forth. There's been minor patches to create that, and that's brilliant because, well, I can still play with my old miniatures. That set of Dark Elves and High Elves, when they get eventually repatched, that I own, now have an official home to go and be played in, where they can be put up against the old factions and used properly. And if you want to throw the new against the old, then you're more than welcome to do that. You want to throw the Daughters of Cain against the old Cult of Cain, Snake Marathi versus Pegasus Marathi, you can do that now. You can do that properly, and you could do this before, where you had sort of patchy notes for factions all spread all over the place, but now that they've got an official army, they can just go, and that's great. As far as War Scrolls go, the keywords are very, very sparse. Like, the only keyword I think they've got is Dark Elves. They do not have the Elf keyword, they do not have the Order or the Chaos, the Destruction or the Death keyword, so they can't be brought into other armies. They are completely standalone, just for the record. Now, I've already explained from a miniature standpoint why that's a good thing, and it honestly just makes sense. If you are someone who owns the older miniatures from an army, then you can still use them properly and even put them against their new world counterparts. And that's great. It allows collections that would previously probably just have ended up on eBay or on a shelf or in a box to still see life on the tabletop if you want them to. And that's lovely. I really do appreciate that, and I have to commend it. Admittedly, we need to see more factions, but that will come with time, I suspect. Just the fact that the Elves are getting a big push right now with the Daughters of Cain and the Ideneth, it kind of makes sense to do an Elven faction, so okay, fine. Maybe we'll get, I don't know, Warriors of Chaos next. I don't know, we'll see. But there's a secondary reason, and this goes back to AOS's origin story as for why this is such a good move. Put a long story short, there are a lot of people, and this is still justifiable, I admit, who are salty about the origin story of Age of Sigmar. They are salty about the end times, they are salty about the death of the world that was, and they consider AOS to be tainted as a result. I'm not making that up, that's not my words, partly. Someone actually said to me in a comment on the video last week, it is tainted with the concept of original sin. If there is original sin, Age of Sigmar is tainted with it, because it is the successor to fantasy. It murdered fantasy so it might live. I'm slightly paraphrasing, but I'm also kinda not. And so some people are upset about that. Some people didn't want the world that was to die. I completely understand that. And so for those people who still want to play out the world that was and just don't like the new setting, well, you can now do that. You have an updated rule set for the new system, so you can still play the new system even if you don't like the new setting. And whilst those rules are not going to be changed, and why you can't bring that army to a tournament unless you organise one of your own, and it would have to be an open play because match play points aren't there for those armies, you can now still play Warhammer Fantasy with updated rules. You don't have to get involved in the New World Order or whatever it is that you want to call Age of Sigmar setting these days. You can play the world that was with the new mechanics of Age of Sigmar. And those mechanics are far easier to pick up, far faster to learn, and probably, in some ways, as tactically rewarding as their old counterparts. I'm not a very experienced fantasy player, so feel free to shoot me down for that, but I think that Age of Sigmar has a lot of depth to it if you really do push it. I know the rules for these factions won't push it as far as the new factions do, but there's still a lot of depth there, and I hope that the fantasy generals who still wanted to use their old armies and didn't really have a problem with the new rules, just wouldn't play it on principle, now have a reason to do so. So I hope that's good for you. If you're one of those people who's like, I really hate Age of Sigmar as a setting, but I don't mind the rules, well, now you have a place to go and play, and you can let fantasy live on through that if you don't want to play the old rules or fan-made rules. You have an official set if that's what you wish to do. It's interesting, actually, in the article, I just want to actually hop back to the article for a moment. I want to draw attention to the last paragraph, the bit underneath the language bar. I wanted this all in one paragraph, but I couldn't get that. As AOS continues to grow, all new heroes and factions will rise. Others may be consumed, slain, and consigned to legend. Now that might just mean, oh yeah, as we introduce a new dwarven faction or a new human faction, the Empire, the dwarves will just get dumped into Legend. That's partly what that means. So we will see the old factions, as their successors, their spiritual successors come out, be retired. And that's fine. We knew that was going to happen. That's the purpose of Legends. It's where the old guard go. And don't want to say go to die because that's wrong. It's just where they go. It's where they end up. But it's interesting. Is there a chance that Legends will also become home to some of the new crowd? I'm not saying entire factions will die and be wiped out and dumped into Legend, but maybe the odd character. Maybe a character will be canonically killed off and they release a Legends War Scroll. Or they do some chicanery where a hero or a formation gets booted through a portal and somehow winds up in the world that was, and is thus given a Legends War Scroll. I don't know. It's a stupid idea, but it's kind of an interesting one, and I hope that it's not just fantasy with new rules. I kind of like to see them do something fun with it. I don't know what they could do, that's just some suggestions I have, but it would be interesting nonetheless. I think that's all I really wanted to say on Legends, because at the moment it's still in its infant phase, and while I look over the wall scrolls and I like what they're doing, there's only so much we can say about it right now, because there's only literally one faction in it. So let me know what you think of it in the comments below. Do you think Legends is a good idea? Is it a worthy place to let the old fantasy factions live on whilst Age of Sigmar is allowed to progress without being weighed down by them, for want of a better word? Or is it just another slap in the face to fantasy? Well, if you're willing to give the fantasy factions a home, why don't you just put out a fantasy rules? Why did you kill fantasy in the first place? So on. Whatever your thoughts are on Warhammer Legends as a concept and in terms of execution, let me know in the comments below. I'm very interested to see what you have to say. Overall, my thoughts are positive. I think this is a good move just for allowing Age of Sigmar to grow and allowing fantasy to live on. It's a good compromise between utterly annihilating the old world, which they did, and also not having the old world weigh down Age of Sigmar too much in terms of having the factions just stuck in there, out of place. It's a good compromise between no fantasy at all and fantasy getting too much in the way. It's a good compromise. The two are now officially separated and they can go forward independently. And I hope that this inspires people to look into the old factions. I know that there isn't much lore in those PDFs, but maybe it will interest you to see where your army came from. I don't know, just a thought. But there you go, those are my thoughts on Warhammer Legends, the new retirement home, I suppose, for the factions of Warhammer Fantasy. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you're interested to see what you have to say. And for context, I just want to put this here at the end of the video. Warhammer Fest, I'm aware, has happened this weekend, and there is a little teaser talking about the future of Age of Sigmar. I'm aware that's happened. However, that has not happened at the time of recording this video. I don't know what's going on with that, and I'm not going to have time, because I have literally got 6 exams next week that are all 3 hours long, to really get time to do that review quick enough. I'm doing this now, and then next week, assuming nothing else major earth-shattering comes up, I will do a My Thoughts on Warhammer Fest, where I'll at least discuss the Age of Sigmar stuff. The 40k stuff we're going to try and discuss on Adeptus Podcastus, but we might not get everything, and I'll generally do a My Thoughts on Warhammer Fest next week, so you can look forward to that, particularly for the AOS crowd, because the 40k crowd, you get some of it on the podcast, but I'll try and do a long-win version too. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed the video. This has been Tactica Imperialis, and until next time, I'll see you all again. Goodbye.